Hello, welcome to this presentation about routes to finance. My name is Michael Strong. I'm a partner with the firm of accountants Saffery and I have been working with my colleague Nick Stevens to provide support and guidance to members of the Southwest Creative Technology Network. This presentation is aimed at people who are developing their businesses, and in particular we're going to be looking at how you prepare to approach funding providers. We'll talk about the types of funding that are available. We'll also cover the importance of keeping good management information, and then finally we'll think about resourcing for a successful business. So how do we prepare to approach funding providers? Firstly, it's important to know when you need finance. Secondly, it's important to be able to write a good business plan. The other thing is to be able to pitch your idea verbally to a potential investor. The other areas that are important include keeping good historical management accounts, pulling out what the key performance indicators are for the business, and then finally being able to forecast into the future. I'm going to cover these points in more detail in the next few slides. So firstly, when is it that we need to get finance? It could be one or two things, and I've given a few examples here. Firstly, there's something called working capital. Working capital is the amount of money you need to have in the bank to be able to support the business as it grows. And there can be a time lag between when you pay either your staff or your suppliers and when you get money in from your customers. That time lag is what creates the working capital need. Another area of time when we need finance is when we're expanding quite rapidly. So there might be some large growth opportunities with new orders coming in from significant customers. At that stage, we need to be able to build greater working capital for our business. As part of our growth, we might be buying large amounts of new equipment, we might be buying materials. We could also be bringing in new staff and paying recruitment fees to bring in new staff, so there could be a finance need to be able to support that. Finally, with more mature businesses, there might be an opportunity to actually acquire other businesses, and in those situations there's a need to be able to raise new funds. The business plan is a written document that describes your core business objectives and how it is that you're going to achieve them. It sets out the goals, the strategies, the marketing plans, your sales plans, and also importantly your financial forecasts. It helps you to understand what it is that you're going to do, and that actually is quite an important step. It also helps us to be able to explain to other people how we're going to make our business a success. There are 3 golden rules about a decent business plan. Firstly, you need to think about your audience. You need to bring them on the journey with you so that they understand what it is that you're doing and what you plan to do. You need to also remember that they're going to be investing in you as well as the business. So make sure there's enough information about your background so they can understand your skills and your opportunities. The second golden rule is striking the right balance in the level of detail that you produce. The catchphrase here is avoid paralysis by analysis. Really what you want to do is you want to give enough information over so that the potential investor understands your business, but don't put so much in that they glaze over and they stop understanding the key points that you want to raise with them. And finally, keep on planning. The business plan is a point in time, but you need to keep it up to date. So if things change once you've written your original business plan, it's perfectly fine to then update your business plan. So it's important to put yourself in the position of your potential investor. First thing they'll be thinking is, do you have what it takes to make the business work? Secondly, it's really important that you are excited about the business concept, and it's important that you articulate that in such a way that they are also excited about the business idea. And then finally, investors are very keen to understand the risk that they have with investing in your business, and consequently it's important that you give them some idea about the potential payback period and the risks that there are around them getting a return on your business idea. The contents of a typical business plan includes a cover page, table of contents and a table of appendices, the executive summary, the body of the plan itself, and then finally the appendices. The executive summary is quite an important part of the business plan because it pulls together the main aspects of what it is that you're doing, and quite often this is going to be the first in the main section that your potential investor will read. The body of the business plan itself goes into the main sections of your business idea. It talks first of all about the background and the purpose of the business. There's a market analysis where you carry out analysis of the opportunity and is there a market for your product or service. Then there's the introduction to the product itself or the service, followed by some financial information including your forecasts for the business. The ownership structure is a section where you identify the ownership, which is probably going to be quite straightforward to start with. It may be yourself, it may be a mixture of yourself plus one or two other people, but it will also propose the potential ownership structure once you've received your funding. So once you've got to the point where you have your potential audience, it's important to be able to pitch your idea in a compelling way to them. There's a term called an elevator pitch, and really if you think about getting into a lift with a potential investor, if you only had the time it took you to get from the basement up to the 15th floor to tell them about your investment in such a way that they'd be interested to find out more and hopefully invest in you, well, that's really the best way to think about creating your pitch. You've got to be able to do it in such a way that the person is compelled to want to find out more in quite a short space of time. And in doing that, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you've got some real world experience. So you've got to have really looked into the market for the idea or the product that you are developing. You've got to have a handle on the cash flows, because if they're going to be parting with money, they need to know that their money is going to be in safe hands. And it's important that your cash flows include some forecasts. It's important to be realistic when you do your forecasts. If you go in, as you've probably watched on Dragon's Den, if people go in with really unrealistic forecasts, it's quite soon that the investors cut that to shreds and then they're out. So yeah, be realistic. Obviously you can be optimistic, but you've got to be able to deliver on your promises. When you're pitching your idea, if you've already been trading for a while, you'll have some management accounts, and your potential investors are going to want to look at your management accounts in order to have a look at whether what you say you can do in the future with your forecasts is borne out by some of the early signs that you've achieved in the early stages. That said, if you are in the very early stages, of course, there's going to be a limited amount of financial data on the history, but it goes without saying, any history that you do have, if you keep a really good clear set of management accounts with key performance indicators, it's going to be helpful when you talk about your business ideas and your business plans with potential investors. When you're pulling out the important information from management accounts, one way to do this effectively is to have a key performance indicator. A KPI is a quantifiable measure that's used to evaluate the success of a business. Now, what is a suitable KPI? It depends upon the business that you have, it depends upon the service or the product or the way it is that you're growing your business. So I've given one or two examples here, but the best thing to do is to look at your business and then identify what you think is important to your business. Examples include number of active users. If, for example, you are putting people onto a website, how many people are signing up to it. At the bottom there is conversion rate. So if actually getting somebody onto the website is the first stage, but the real important thing is that they then click the link to start to do business with you, well, that's the conversion rate. Burn rate, that might be a key performance indicator showing how you're working through the cash that you have invested in the business at the early stages. Gross margin and revenue, well, they're terms that you're probably familiar with, revenue being your sales and also the growth in your sales, gross margin meaning the profit margin that you've made after taking off your direct costs of making the sale. Financial forecasts are an important part of your business plan because they show prospective lenders and investors that your business is going to be profitable. The lenders and investors are going to want to review the logic behind your strategy, so be ready to answer their questions about the various forecasts that you've put in place. I'm now going to talk about the different types of funding available for businesses. before I do that, quoting from Steve Jobs, I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. That's relevant to this because in order to get the funding, whatever type it is, you are going to need plenty of perseverance. The types of startup funding are split into debt, equity and grants. In terms of debt funding, there are different types. This includes loans or overdrafts, credit cards, crowd-funded debt, or debt that you, your family or your friends give to the business. The key idea about debt is that when you have debt in the business, it doesn't cause you to lose control. You just have the obligation to pay back the debt and any interest that is accruing on that debt. You need to, of course, consider the repayments when you do agree a loan or an overdraft or some other debt. You need to be able to repay and therefore don't overstretch yourself. When the debt is being negotiated, some lenders will want to have some security against the debt, so they might, for example, ask you to give a personal guarantee on your own assets, and that could include a personal guarantee on your house. When you're getting debt from family and friends, whilst this is a much more informal way of loaning money into the business, it's still important to get some sensible agreements in place over the time periods that you're going to be repaying, and also if there's going to be some interest charged. The second type of funding is equity funding. This can come from different places as well, including business angels, venture capitalists, crowdfunding, and from you, family and friends. Equity funding is different to debt funding. Investors buy a stake in your business and give you cash in return for a share in the business. So unlike debt, you don't have an obligation to pay the money back to those investors. However, again, unlike debt, they get a share in future profits or sale of the business. When you're negotiating with a potential investor, there is a point about how you value the business. It is possible to make valuations based on certain things such as the forecast profits of the business in the future, and then what's called a multiple of those profits. And of course this is not a hard and fast rule and is going to be subject to negotiation. So you may come up with a valuation for your business which is higher than the valuation that a potential investor gives you when they try to value your business, and you'll probably end up meeting somewhere in the middle. Crowdfunding is a type of fundraising that includes attracting funding from large numbers of people. It's normally accessed via online platforms and it's becoming increasingly popular. There are a number of different types of crowdfunding available. These include equity fundraising, where you are attracting fundraising from a number of people and they are taking a stake in the business. Peer-to-peer lending is a type of debt funding that is carried out on a crowdfunding platform. Rewards-based crowdfunding is a type of funding where the people who are investing in your business are paying money in exchange for some type of good or service in the future when your business is successful. Charities can also fundraise using crowdfunding, and that's the donations-based type. And then finally, there's a type of crowdfunding where people put money into your business in exchange for the opportunity for sharing some type of percentage of either revenue or profit in the future. Another way of raising cash, particularly if you're in innovative businesses, is via grants. This could be local grants, or it could be special innovation types of grants, or there's also grants for providing training to staff, and there are grants towards energy and environmental efficient areas of business. A way to identify sources of funding in the Southwest is to start on the gov.uk website. That provides a list of funding opportunities that are available, and these are updated when new funding opportunities arise. The funding opportunities are nationwide, but it's also possible to filter into region and industry. Some examples of support that's available include the BCRS business loans, and these are loans to help small and medium-sized businesses to develop and grow. There are business solutions, which are a number of growth programs that are available for businesses that are in the startup phase. And there's also a government-supported entity called Innovate UK that provides grant funding, innovation loans and expert support for new technologies. If you're putting your own money into your business and into your bank account for your business, there are one or two things to consider. For example, whether or not the money that you're investing is via share capital or via debt. So are you loaning the money to the business, and that would be called a director's loan account, or are you putting money into the business in exchange for share capital? I'm not going to go into the detail of all of this here, but really I just want to make you aware that there are tax implications of the two different ways of putting money into a business. So when you are about to invest significant amounts, it's worth having a chat with an accountant or a tax advisor at that point. I have a few remaining slides to talk through. One of them is this slide, which shows the typical funding stages in a business, where it's getting investment right at the early stage, and then it's gradually getting more investment as it grows and grows and grows. I'm just going to talk through this in overview really, and the idea is that at very early stages you're just getting sufficient investment in to be able to build the idea in the business, and that's called pre-seed funding. At a slightly later stage, when you've launched your product or you're building or recruiting people, there's something there called seed funding. Now, by the time you get to a more established business, you may need to expand your working capital to be able to grow, because you might be getting some significant orders in from people, and that's at the point where you'd have something called Series A funding. And then a bit later on, you might have some significant customer orders which require you to significantly expand your operation. So you might have a later set of funding which would be called Series B, and then so on and so forth. As the business grows and grows, you may go through various other types of growth, and then ultimately businesses might choose to list on the stock exchange. So that's what's called an IPO. It's not too important to understand all of the detailed terminology here, but it's just to make you aware, as the business grows, there are a number of stages of funding. While the business is growing, I have mentioned a couple of times how important it is to keep good management information. Why is that? Well, it's critical to the successful management of your business. It helps you to make effective decisions. It also helps you to identify areas for improvement. So if you do have good management information and you have a number of different products or services, that management information helps you to identify which areas of the business are performing better than others, and helps you to be able to identify if there are steps that you need to take to improve the areas that aren't doing quite so well. All of this up-to-date management information enables you to reduce the chance that your business is going to fail. Right, I'm on the closing stretch now of the presentation, and the final things I'm going to talk about are areas of resourcing outside of pure finances. It's not just money that makes a business successful. The other resources that are important are the staff, the actual intellectual property in the industry that you're working in, support systems that you have in place, and the premises and equipment that you use for your business. The support structure that you'll need in place as you grow includes professional advisors. That includes lawyers, accountants and bankers. In addition to that, when you're setting up your business, it's important to identify the right location for your business. In the early stages, office space can be expensive, so it might be that you're setting up your business from home, but you will need to set up a situation where if you have business meetings with people, you can hold those meetings in the right places. So depending on the nature of the business, you may at some point need to take physical space, but it is important to think about not entering into financial commitments that are difficult to stick to in the early stages of your business growth. So that's the end of this presentation. I hope you found it useful, and please do feel free to get in contact if you have any questions. Our email address and contact telephone numbers are there on the screen, so please feel free to contact either myself, that's Michael Strong, or my colleague Nicholas Stevens. We're also available for a free 30-minute consultation. Again, thanks very much for your time, and I hope this was helpful.